Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll start with roll call. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. You have before you the meeting, the minutes of the regular meeting of July 8th, 2019. What is your pleasure?
Move the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Next, we have the city manager's report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the Commission, and public. Just a couple of things to remind you all of. Our budget is due to you all by the end of July. So August 1st is actually my deadline, so we'll be, hello, welcome. We'll be dropping the budget the end of the month, probably the 11th hour, literally. So look for that in your inbox. We'll also be making that available to the public, and there'll be some media information out there prior to us dropping that information. So our budget meeting is planned for Tuesday, August 6th, and we also have August 7th reserved if we should so need it, and that's the second floor of City Hall. I believe 5:15 start time. So everyone mark their calendars there. We have good news on sales tax. For the month of June, we were up 9.64%. That pulls us up cumulatively for the year 2.92%. And for the triple B, June came in at 7.14%, and that puts them just about at flat for the year. So that's the direction we want to be headed there. I did want to visit with the Commission about our meeting with FEMA on Wednesday. We visited with FEMA officials, and there was folks there from Yankton County, from the townships and the city, and we talked about the assistance for public infrastructure, so damage that was done due to the event. And we're required to fill out a request for public assistance, and that's due on August 5th, but we have filled that out already, so they already have that meeting. We'll be waiting for FEMA to assign us a couple of things. One, password and access to the grants portal, and that's where we'll have to start compiling all our data that our staff has worked hard to put together, updating it and putting into that grant assistance portal so that they have an understanding of damage. We'll also be waiting for them to assign us a FEMA representative to work with our staff on helping us scope our project and walking us through all the various programs. So we're working on that. In advance of that, I visited with District 3 today to start to work on an environmental assessment for us, because we know that we'll need that for any federal assistance. So we're going to try to get a little more ahead of the game by having them work on that federal assistant or environmental analysis, which also includes things like all letters and information to all the various agencies like Game, Fish, and Parks for endangered species, the SHPO for potential archaeological analysis, all those types of things. So we're going to get them working on that groundwork so we can prepare to submit applications once we know the scope and have talked with our FEMA representative. The other deadline that we're working towards is a early December deadline for having everything into FEMA. So we're going to, of course, try to do that before that time of year since that gets busy, but that's the kind of timeline we're working with. So what we need from the Commission right now is really just patience and understanding that our staff is going to have to forego some of the other things that we would typically be doing without letting any of the critical duties or services, of course, fail. But we're going to need some time and ability to work with those things and make that a priority this fall. And we'll also probably be coming to you with some decisions regarding things like the environmental analysis bill and those types of things. So we'll let you know when those come up, and we'll let you know project updates as we hear them from FEMA, and if the FEMA representative we're assigned is available, I'd like for she or he to come and visit with all of us as well. So we'll let you know when the time gets closer. I don't have anything else specific for the commission. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I did want to remind everybody that our mission is to provide exemplary experiences, services, and spaces that create opportunities for everyone to learn, engage, and thrive.
Thank you, City Manager Leon. Does the commission have any more questions for the city manager? All right. We'll move on to the consent agenda, or excuse me, public appearances. This is a time when those members of the audience who wish to address the commission about something not on tonight's agenda can step to the podium, introduce themselves, and share their thoughts. Seeing no movement in the audience, now we will move on to the consent agenda. So number one is consideration of memorandum 19-153 recommending approval of an application for a peddler's license for Southwestern Advantage to go house to house selling educational books and materials from July 23rd to August 23rd, 2019. Number two is consideration of memorandum 19-158 recommending approval of the application from Scott Lucan Sculptures for a transient merchant license from August 15th to September 15th, 2019. Number three is establishing August 12th as the date for the public hearing on the request for a special malt beverage on-sale retailer's license for August 17th from the Yankton Rodeo Association, and that would be for the rodeo grounds at 404 Paddle Wheel Drive. And number four is establish August 12th as the date for the public hearing on the request for a special events retail on-sale liquor license for August 22nd from Ben's Brewing Company for the Music at the Meridian event by the Meridian Bridge. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion amongst the commissioners about the
Yes.
consent agenda?
In regards to Memorandum 19 with the educational materials, do we know a little more, because we've had some problems in the past with certain groups being a little too pushy, and we've got a lot of complaints? Is that the same group, or is this a different?
Well, it's the same company, I believe, that was here last year. However, it's not the same salespeople. So we're working with different people. We do, when we get a peddler's license, we get their IDs, and we also visit with the police department about them. They take a look at their IDs, make sure there's no big red flags there. So, you know, if we get a complaint, we'll certainly address the individual, and as we did last year, notify the company that's the hires those individuals.
One thing I've seen the city of Vermillion do is when they give out a peddler's license like this, they will post a photo of that individual on their social media pages. I don't know if that's something that we're interested in having done.
We did send out a post on Facebook about peddler's license, and that summers is the time when we do see some peddlers. We discussed that as a staff, and we wondered about individuals' privacy, but if that's something the commission wishes to do, we will do that. Just let me know.
I think the main thing is that we're aware of it early, that we can, if we see something, let's, you know, get on it right away and not let it linger out through the season. You know, get on and find out for sure, you know, okay, because obviously we get complaints again. This is not the right thing to do, I believe.
Amy, what is our protocol if we would get complaints? Can we pull a license or
Yes.
withdraw it so that they can no longer solicit?
Yes,
Okay.
we can. And I believe last year we did, and they came and visited with us about an appeal, but just I think it was the company's policy. It was an individual's or a couple individuals' method of sales. But again, if the commission would like to post those IDs on our Facebook, we can do that.
I think that's a good idea, personally. Just knowledge is power.
Amy, for clarification, you said post the ID. You mean a picture of the person, not their actual ID?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, what I've seen done is they post a picture and then an explanation of this person is authorized with the peddler's license to do such and such.
If it is approved under consent, we'll do that in the morning.
Is there any more discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission about anything on the consent agenda? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We have no old business on the agenda this evening, so we'll move on to new business. Number one is consideration of memorandum 19-154 and resolution 19-30 regarding a request by the Yankton Parks and Recreation Department for a special events parking ordinance number 933 to be in place on August 30th for the Welcome to Walnut event. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about this item?
In the past, we've had people going around asking for signatures from area businesses and residents on street closures. Was that done with this? I know you have to give them notice, I'm sure.
No, we'll be planning on doing that once we have the approval from the commission. We'll go around to all the businesses and make sure everybody's well aware of what we're planning for that night.
But haven't we discussed before, as soon as, something was brought up that they, we just talked about this with the closure for the farmer's market, to make sure before we pass something that the people that are affected by the closure of that street wasn't going to, they were going to be okay with that.
Yes, we have discussed that, yes.
But that wasn't done on this time?
No, not on this, no.
Okay.
Is there any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number two under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-163 in support of resolution 19-33 regarding providing for the execution, sale, and delivery of not to exceed $14 million aggregate original amount of certificates of participation, authorizing the construction and equipping of a new aquatic center at Phantom Memorial Park. We might need some deciphering of that language for the public tonight. What is your pleasure?
Move the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion?
Just what you said. Love some clarification on putting this in English, please.
Sure. Honorable Mayor, members of the commission, we'll all kind of work on this together. Toby Morris is here, and he'll address you a little bit about the process of bonding. As you know, in December, 66% of the voters voted to opt out of their tax limitation for an amount up to $884,043 annually starting calendar year 2019, with the taxes due in 2020. So this is for 20 years through 2023. We are coming towards the end of design for the Huther Family Aquatics Facility, and because of that, we are getting ready to bid the project and advertise and those types of things. So we have been working with Toby Morris, who's here this evening, of Doherty and Company, and Meyer Henry Sargent as our underwriter and bond counsel to help us prepare for financing of that project. So the attached resolution in your packet authorizes those entities to be our agents, so to speak, to act on our behalf and provide to prepare and distribute the preliminary official statement describing the bonds, the certificates of participation. So really what this resolution would do, if you would pass it, is allow Mr. Morris to issue the bonds for the Aquatic Center. So it is really a big step moving forward towards the project and the financing. So Mr. Morris, if you'd like to give a few words as well about the process and the great interest rate you're going to get us.
Thank you, Amy, members of the commission. Toby Morris with Doherty and Company. Starting the process with borrowing the money always begins with the resolution that you have before you. It's an amount in there that you'll see is not to exceed $14 million. What has happened over the past 3 or 4 months, you'll look at the graph that I have in front of you, is indicative showing where the current interest rates are at. So the market has really come together in terms of providing a lower interest rate and maximizing more of bond proceeds for the facility. Because the voters applied or allowed the vote up to $884,000, what we do is we work backwards and say, okay, $884,000 over 20 years, present value that back, how much does that net out to the city? Right now it's estimated about $13 to $13.2 million. The sensitivity of it when you borrow that much money is extreme, because for every 10 basis points, 1/10 of 1%, say you borrow at 3.2, say you borrow at 3.2% and it nets out 13.2 million. If you borrow at 3.3%, it might only net you out 13 million. So it's a very sensitive ratio in terms of when we look at it over 20 years. Having seen where the market's at, talking with Al and Amy, highly encouraged to move into the market probably as soon as we can. We have a lot of the paperwork that is done right now. We'll be submitting it to the rating agency here after you guys were to authorize the resolution. It still by no means does it obligate you to go forth. It just gets a lot of the legal particulars behind us so that we can move into the market, providing we still see the favorable rates that we're at right now. And so this is, like I said, the first step. We'll stay in constant contact with Al, and I sort of have him on speed dial right now and keeping him updated where things are at. But right now I would say we're looking at netting out at least 13, if not north of that, $1 million for the project. Once we do that, we'll immediately invest it, because the bids will go out, I think you're saying this fall, with the construction to start in the spring. So you definitely don't want to leave 13 million idle. So we'll ladder that out, working with the engineers on what the drawdown schedule is, trying to maximize as much as we can on that part as well. So we leave no stone unturned when it comes to the financing. I can get a lot more detailed or keep it at the level. I don't want to put anybody to sleep tonight.
No, I appreciate that. That makes sense.
Okay.
It's a science and an art, I think, and we appreciate having your expertise there to help guide us through it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any more commission questions for Mr. Morris? All right. Any more discussion in general? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-152, recommending approval of the naming rights committee recommendation for the proposed Cheryl Ann Sommer Memorial Fire feature. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? I would say we want to express our gratitude to the Sommer family for what has already been a really great addition to the downtown. I've seen a lot of people sitting around that fire in the evenings, some young lovers even, maybe on a date. So I think that'll be the foundation for a lot of conversations and enjoyment for the community in the future. And with that, we'll have roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 4, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 19-161 and resolution 19-32 regarding a request by the Riverboat Days Committee for special events parking ordinance number 933 to be in place during Riverboat Days from August 16th through 18th. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Todd, do you maybe want to walk us through where this will apply to?
So I believe the normal parking, no parking on Levy Street, but they're also looking at doing a little bit more heading north and south on some of those either alleyways or streets along there to, again, just provide a little bit better access to either people with mobility issues or, again, they can, when they look at parking, they're also thinking about their vendors and both on the art side of it with also the food and getting stuff into the park. So just some of those different things. And again, the different staff have looked at it all and nobody has an issue.
Is there any commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Number 5 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-151 supporting the introduction, public comments, and first reading of ordinance number 1023, which applies to noxious weeds. This update to section 2416 I got lost here in my scribbles. So this would establish August 12th, 2019 as the public hearing for this ordinance that would apply to noxious weeds. What is your pleasure?
Move to introduce the ordinance.
Ross, do you maybe want to walk us through what this would do?
Sure. This is basically a facelift to the existing noxious weeds ordinance that our community already has in place. This particular ordinance was last updated in 2009, and periodically we've been updating it as the list of noxious weeds changes, but it seemed like the simpler approach was to just adopt as our list what the state board deems as noxious weeds. So as that changes over time, it prevents the need to keep coming back to the commission for periodic updates. It does leave in place, however, the 8-inch grass limitation, so we all need to keep mowing our lawns.
Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission at this time? All right. Again, August 12th would be the public hearing for that. Number 6 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-157 regarding a sidewalk cafe license for Abe's Coffee House. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item?
The map that was in the packet's a little hard to see what exactly that they wanted to do there. Can somebody explain? Are they tables and chairs like we see on a lot of the other bump outs down there, or what are they doing? It's just black and white.
Yes, my understanding is what they have now is what they want to continue to have. And they weren't aware of the policy of sidewalk cafe ordinance. Also, that's an interesting property because there is some sidewalk or right-of-way which they own, isn't that? Yeah, so the map isn't the best there, and we apologize for that, but we're not going to see anything different that they don't currently have, and they may have a few more, but nothing.
Is there any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Number 7 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-155 regarding resolution 19-31, a plat of 307 Lilac Lane and 400 Tulip Lane. Matthew Christensen of White Crane Estates LLC is the owner. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Number 8, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 19-160 regarding a request by the City of Yankton Parks and Recreation Department for a fireworks public display on August 30th through 31st, 2019, and September 1st, 2019. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Todd, this is affiliated with the air show, correct?
That is correct.
And Jake, do I understand correctly that one of the pilots will be shooting fireworks from his plane?
No, it's
No?
ground
Oh, okay.
set off fireworks. But they are looking for kids to shoot airplanes down if they want to. We do have some opportunities for you. So no, basically it's set off for electronic, just like you would a small fireworks display during this the show with the Immortal Red Baron.
Very exciting. Any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Number 9, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 19-159 authorizing the city manager to execute a municipal bicycle trail easement on private property in Lot 1, Block 1 of Gulf View Estates subdivision. What is your pleasure?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 10, which I assume many of you are here for tonight, is consideration of memorandum 19-156 recommending approval of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Yankton and the Yankton Youth Soccer Association for a long-term lease of city-owned property for a soccer complex. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave and Todd, do you want to walk us through what this agreement would mean for the city and for the Youth Soccer Association and the 4030 Foundation?
We're going to show the map too, Mayor, so we'll get the lights and everyone can see what we're talking about here.
So I can help walk you through the actual locations that are described in the memorandum of understanding and what the existing and future responsibilities are associated with which entity would be managing those properties. And then I'm assuming Todd and Amy will talk to you about the fun stuff with the activities that will actually occur on the sites. The area in blue here is what the city owns right now, a little over 40 acres. And the area in green here, that kind of light lime green, is what the 4030 Foundation owns right now, approaching 50 acres, 48 acres. The proposal is for the 4030 Foundation to transfer that property in green, except for this area in white that they would retain ownership of, to the Soccer Association, and in turn, at a substantially, at a generous price, I guess, or philanthropic price, and then in turn, the 4030 Foundation, or excuse me, the Yankton Youth Soccer Association would transfer this property to the City of Yankton in return for having an exclusive lease of this area for the purposes of continuing occupancy as a soccer complex and having the ability in the future to have access to approximately 5 acres on the west side of Spruce Street also. So as their master plan moves ahead, they can plan for configuration here and future uses here. What this does for the city of Yankton in a lot of ways is it recognizes the change in the retail marketplace. 10 years ago, might have thought this area here was suitable for big box retail manufacturing, as we all have discussed recently as the markets have changed with shopping trends. That isn't necessarily the case. So the city would maintain ownership of this 18 or 19 acres for retail purposes and other occupancies that would be complementary of and complemented by the adjacent land use of the soccer association. And what the city would end up with is the ability to request proposals for development on property that's actually more suited to one of our greatest needs right now, and that would be the potential for some expanded residential occupancies. The city would end up owning both areas that are in the blue and green with a long-term 99-year lease to Yankton Youth Soccer on the hatched-in areas. There's one small area right here that is outside the lease that's occupied by soccer, and the MOU describes that they can continue to use that until such time that the city lets them know that there's development potential on the site.
The inner planner in me makes me say that this is also in keeping with the Mead Neighborhood Concept Plan. You'll recall that a number of years ago we walked through a process with the community to develop a concept plan for the Mead neighborhood. One of the valuable aspects we thought of that plan was no one wanted to obstruct the view of that important landmark for a community and important landmark for the history, what happened and happens on that campus. So having a soccer field there would certainly still provide for that view shed and really is a nice complement, we think, to what happens further to the north. So from a land use perspective, that fits in nicely as well.
One of the other critical elements in the MOU is that long-term there would be the ability for connective public infrastructure through this site also. So in the future, the commission and the soccer association are going to have to coordinate with each other as far as the development occurs on the leased area to make sure that there is still a street corridor essentially for access between Spruce Street and the development property to the east, and also from Spruce Street to the west.
Todd, would you like to fill everyone in on sort of the history we've had with soccer over the years and how we got to where we are today?
So it could be a long history, so I'll give you a short version. But at one time, soccer had provided funds and there was some irrigation done both at Memorial Park, Fanto Memorial Park, and at the Summit Activity Center. And through time and different needs, the quality of ground at the SAC isn't always the greatest, even with irrigation, and so they've started to use some other fields, so that use kind of fell away. Memorial Park is nice, but it is still a park and not really a soccer complex. And so parking and getting to the fields and gopher holes and not irrigated and just some different issues there through time. So going back to the Stockwell master plan for outdoor athletic facilities, soccer, when the city bought the property, that need for soccer complex land kind of rose to the top. And it sat there all of this time. There's been multiple discussions about other lands and trying to do a site in multiple different locations. And again, nobody was ever willing to jump on that plan. And so, again, it took a little bit of patience, but we just worked through it and finally have got to this point now where soccer can be all in one location. Again, going back to that Stockwell plan, if you remember, it was acquiring land, getting soccer all in one site. Then the discussion became, well, what about softball and trying to get all of their needs in one side, and that frees up fields for baseball. So again, the one aspect of outdoor sports that wasn't it was touched on but not detailed out, was the outdoor pool. So with this transaction now, we've taken the two biggest needs off of the list out of that master plan. And again, people need to have patience with us. It takes us time, and sometimes people don't have patience with us, but we can work through it. So now soccer will have the ability to be in one location, not split, and when they have tournaments in town or whatever else, sending people to different locations and all those type of things. Restrooms, concessions, all of those things start to come together when you have a soccer complex. And again, soccer's numbers have been strong both in the spring and the fall season. They've had good tournament numbers. They've expanded into wintertime soccer, indoor soccer, and utilizing indoor space and having a tournament to bring people to town. So they've done a lot of great things for the city of Yankton. So it took time and patience, but we finally have come around to taking one more thing off of our master plan list and saying we've accomplished something great here in Yankton.
I think soccer will want to visit with you about the philanthropy of the 4030 Foundation, also what their process is going to be going forward. Before they do that, I would like to remind the commission a little bit about the momentum in the community that's been going on the last 2 or 3 years, and how proud I am of our organization for being a part of that momentum. When you look at things like the Mount Marty College Fieldhouse, the Aquatic Center, some of the Crane Youngworth Field, some of the big things that are happening, this is a big step forward. This isn't by coincidence. This is an intention of leadership in our community saying, yeah, we're tired of no, and we're going to do things. And so I'm really pleased to hear sentiments among you that you're interested in doing this. This has been a long burning issue for a long time. It kind of reminds me of Douglas Street, North Douglas. It's kind of like always tickling my brain back there. And gosh, if we can do these things, we can probably help even other things like malls and hotels and things move along too. But I'm just really proud of the community for this. And I have heard nothing negative. I've heard no negativity about this whatsoever. I've heard things like, yeah, it's about time. This is what it should have been a long time. I've heard good for you. I've heard what a great compromise. I've heard nothing negative from the public. So our recommendation to staff is let's get some soccer fields up and let's play more soccer. And I think there's a lot of young people here who would agree with you.
If I may, having children that are involved in 6 sports, unfortunately one of them not soccer, but they started out in that. And I think what I love about soccer in Yankton, one is how competitive it is, but 2, it's one of the sports that students can start at a really young age to start building their athletic skills. So I do want to commend the soccer board for sticking to it and not taking no for an answer, and just really being dogged in their pursuit of doing this, because this is what pays off. And I would echo Amy too. I travel, as all of you do, for all of our kids and their sports, and I'd put Yankton up against any other community for what they can offer.
Also, I'd like to compliment the Soccer Association, all the people involved. My kids played, and I tell you what, it's been really exciting to have the facilities we have, and it's been frustrating, I gotta admit, trying to go through this process, but thanks to the staff and the soccer, I rise in favor of this document, because I think that it's important that we show that we are already willing, and we're giving up something. We're giving up possibility, but why not? It's for a good cause, and I think we're willing to work together. One thing I like to point out is, I've been to these cities with my kids, and when there's a field somewhere, you try to find it, you're trying to in a rush, you have to swing through McDonald's on the way. It's hard to find, and having it in one spot is a big thing. I'm glad that we were able to accomplish that.
Any more commission discussion? I'm thinking maybe the Youth Soccer Association would like to say something. If you could step up to the podium and introduce yourself. Good to see you, Wes.
My name is Wes Chambers. I'm the president of the Yankton Youth Soccer Association, and this is a cool day. We got to come here today after years and years of a lot of hard work. And Pardon me, it's just kind of one of the moments. So, back up a little bit. This couldn't happen without the 4030 Foundation. The 4030 Foundation, Luke, Jesse, and Ryan came to us with an idea of saying, hey, we had a dream for that 4030 land. We think right now we would like soccer to put their complex there. And our group, which would be Sandra, Jeff Wolfgram, and Sherry Loest and I sat in a room and we kind of brainstormed and said, what happens if we could flip that property to the city to retain and get a long-term lease on the property that we have? And then hats off to the commission to being very receptive. Amy, her team, Dave and Todd, we sat in a lot of rooms and we hashed this over and came up with what I think for this community is probably the biggest win-win that we could come up with. What's cool about this, guys, if you think about it, is we go out in the community with your blessing. We can go out into the community and we can say we've got a partnership of a philanthropic organization like 4030, soccer association, the city. What a cool story to tell. And that story is going to help us realize the complex of our dreams. And for all these little kids out here, that's their dream, is to have a field where they can do what they want and have great facilities where people come to our community like we go to others and go, wow, what a great place to play soccer. And I can't be more ecstatic that this is coming to this point. And I'm proud to say one thing about it, by us staying there, just another point of reference for everybody, it's going to cheapen our development costs up. Look at what we're starting with. We're not starting from a bare piece of black dirt, which is what we looked at, as Todd articulated, multiple different iterations and times. We looked at lots of different property, and we kept circling and circling. And this is the win-win. And so hats off to everyone in this room for their support, because this took a village to get us to this point. And it's a true community effort. So I thank you, and I hope you say yes here in just a few minutes.
Yes, absolutely. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Carol Ebel. My husband, Gerald Ebel, was vice president of the Soccer Association. And in 1996, Jerry and I wrote a letter at the suggestion of John Kobeisman to Governor William Jankel. At that time, the Soccer Association had 1,000 kids involved in this town. The Soccer Association has given $20,000 to the development of the Summit Center of the high school area for the fields there for 5 years, and we had them there for 5 years. At any rate, I can remember coming home from work one day, and my son, who was a junior in high school, said, "Mom, the governor's office called you. You're supposed to call him back." And I'm going, come on, yeah, right. And so finally I called, and Governor Janklow awarded the Soccer Association the land that it has now for 20 years, $1 a year for rent. It was phenomenal. Eisenbrown and Company became involved in developing what you have there. Vapor Plumbing put in the irrigation systems. At the time, Alumax did the lighting system. There was such a community pouring in to develop the complex as it is now. The flower box that is out there, that was one of our fundraisers. And the flagpole there is there was a 14-year-old girl, boy and girl, at a very young age of 14, who died in a car accident. There, the girl's soccer family bought that flagpole, and that flagpole is in memory of hers. And I know that the boys' soccer family bought a tree, and there's a memorial out there for the tree. And when Jerry and I heard that the city had bought this property and the intent was to develop it, we went, oh my God, all this work and all the pour that came into this community to build this complex. And I want to say from the bottom of my heart, and emotion, yes, thank you. Jerry and I have been out of it a long time, except now our grandson plays soccer, so yeah, we're back in it. But this is phenomenal. This was a love of life. I can remember Jerry and I going out there and using the state's watering truck and going around and watering all the trees that because we didn't have irrigation yet. It was an absolute work of love. And thank you folks for continuing this, and thank you folks for considering this with all my heart.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else in the audience like to address the commission? All right, then I think we're ready for roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Well, thank you again for all the hard work of the Youth Soccer Association. As has been stated here tonight, we know you've done a lot of problem solving over the years. You've been told no a lot, but you've always been positive when you've been told no and said, okay, we're going to look for an alternate solution. And through that process of tenacity and staying positive, you built relationships, and that's how we got here today. So really just appreciate all the work you've done. And also thanks to the 4030 Foundation for their willingness to get this final piece of the puzzle put in place so we could figure it all out. So thank you.
Also, a quick comment. When I first ran for commission 8 years ago, they said, don't ever bring the soccer moms in the room. Thank you.
Of course, everyone's welcome to stay if you want to hear about the E911 exciting radio project. But we'll also give you a minute if you choose to spend this beautiful evening maybe kicking a soccer ball around. So thank you. And Wes, you're on donuts next time we meet.
Okay. Now on to the final item on tonight's agenda, number 11, under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-162 and resolution 19-34, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents associated with the recommendation to proceed with Raycom for the radio project. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dwayne, do you maybe want to explain to us what the deal is here? Because I know we're not going with the low bid, but there's a good reason for that.
Good evening, Dwayne Johnson, Information and Technology Services Director for the City of Yankton. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, as you mentioned, we will not be going with the low bidder. When we went out to receive proposals, the city received two proposals, one from Baycom for $640,358, and the second proposal was from Raycom for $779,091. In reviewing the proposals, the consultant and the city of Yankton determined that Baycom was not considered a responsive bidder. They did not meet the requirements set forth in the proposal. So at the recommendation of our consultant, we began negotiations with the lowest responsible respondent to the request for proposals, which is Raycom. We've kind of negotiated back and forth. We had some difficulty in siting the radio tower at the City Hall location. The commission had previously approved a conditional use permit for that location. And in dealing with all of the utilities, we finally ended up going back on the roof of the building with the antennas. So that was kind of the last key factor in kind of working out the details of the proposals. And what you see before you tonight, which is estimated $782,896.76 is where we are at today in the negotiation process. That adds in a few additional alternatives, which included 911 recorder system, maintenance and support for years 4 and 5 for the project, along with some other various details that have been negotiated as the process goes along. Where we are today is we're just down to the last fine tuning of the contract with Raycom. It includes things, a couple of additions or deletions to the proposal, both items that are under 10K, a timeline for completion of that project. One of the variables that we're working through is we have a contract with a company called Cell Site Solutions to put a communications building at the West Water Tower, and we ended up moving the location of that building to not interfere with the water tower's foundation. And so we're waiting for a final construction timeline from Cell Site Solutions to nail down the contract dates for Raycom. A lot of moving parts in this. We've been working at it for quite a while, not as long as the Soccer Association, but it seems like it. It's certainly been several years that this project's been in the making, along with the commission's earlier support for purchase for the police radios. This project will replace the majority of the radio equipment at the PSAP, at the 911 answering station, as well as construct a new digital 800 megahertz radio system for the police department to use. So we're excited about moving forward with the project and getting it up and going. So with that, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions. A lot of information, I know, but it's one of those technical things that we, thank goodness, we've got a good consultant that we're working with.
So clarify for me, the $400,000 from the E911 fund, does that apply to this?
That's correct.
So then the city's share will be the 382,000?
Yeah, depending on making sure that all of those costs are eligible. The E911 funds are restricted to expenses that benefit the PSAP directly only. There can be some cost sharing, like for instance, some of the stuff that goes out at the radio site, the dispatch center, those E911 funds can share in those costs. But for things like for radios for the police department or the actual radios for the site themselves to communicate with the police department, those are not eligible 911 expenses. So those things will have to be specifically excluded.
Since this is an upgrade, does the cost include training? Is there a training component to this, or is it not different enough that there'll be extensive training that needs to be done?
There will be some training. The system will basically, from an end user standpoint, will function pretty much the same for the radio users. The difference will be in the radio console that the dispatchers use. It'll be a new operating system. You know, our existing equipment is about 17 years old, and so most of it's analog. So it'll be a substantial change. So we'll go from analog equipment to something that's basically a computer. All of the new radios are basically a computer with programming with a transmit and receive function. So it'll be a big change, but operationally probably not significant. The other component that I mentioned that'll include some training too is the 911 recorder. And what we'll do is we'll put the new system in place. The old one would record analog signals from the old system. The new one will be all digital. So as we get the new radio system on board, we add in the new upgraded phone system that the sheriff and the police department are sharing. And then when we get our new 911 system yet this fall, that'll plug right into. That'll also be digital. You know, that's another moving component of this. And I don't know if I included it in my CIM, but the state approved a new 911 answering system vendor. So between now and December 15th, we will be going through the entire upgrade process on the 911 answering system. So that'll be a complete new system. Julia Hussein, the dispatch supervisor, and Taylor are going to Vermillion tomorrow for training on that new system. So that's exciting as well, but also another component to make sure everything fits together and works together.
Any more commission discussion? Thank you very much, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. And with that, we have no further business on tonight's agenda, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Is anyone opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.